by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
When you think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
Well, you have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so that's not so bad.
Exactly.
So I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks to you.
And I'm back. I'm back, and I'm checking my audio here, folks, because I've had too many bad experiences. I just want to make sure that everything is good, and I'm actually operating with the microphone that is in front of me, and it seems that I am. My shirt, I got a new shirt from REI. I think it's too big. I got to return it. But good to be here. Good to see all of you folks today in the chat. And today I'm going to be a little bit more prepared than I was last week. I still haven't published that story that I was working on last week, but I want to go over the things that I have been writing about and the things that I've been researching. I'm still working on that story, but it led me kind of down a couple of rabbit holes, and I wanted to share that stuff with you. So if you didn't watch last week, I'm writing a story about what I'm calling leading indicators of epistemological warfare. And the basic idea is that we can tell by using the Parmenides principle of what is. We can look at metadata, which is a concept that I learned from George Webb. Although maybe we should start the show off. Many people want to see the dog, and he's kind of sniffing around. So I'm going to ask Jessica to come bring Quigley so that you guys can all see Quigley. Here he comes. I'm going to move over. There he is.
The dog.
This is Quigley.
He's moving around.
He's moving around. All right.
A lot.
Okay. There he is, Quigley. Quigley is a Bernedoodle mini, and he's having a good day today. He's had kind of a rough time since we got him because he's had some gastrointestinal issues, and they're all better now. We took him to the vet, and they're Las Posas Veterinary Clinic. They do an amazing job, so highly recommended if you're in the Oxnard area. In any case, I've been writing about leading indicators of epistemological warfare, and what I mean by that is that in a post-truth world where you don't know who to believe or what to believe, there are ways that you can use linguistics as a filtering mechanism to kind of determine the truthiness of things. Now, I'm not calling them laws or axioms because they're really more kind of leading indicators. They're things that you can look at and you can determine whether or not you think something is true or not. So I'm going to go through them quickly because I'm writing a really kind of big, long article about it. But at the same time, I want to share with you a couple of the things that I've discovered in the meantime since I did the show last week. So the 4 leading indicators that I've got of epistemological warfare. One is that public narratives are amplified by how well they serve power, not truth. That is, if something is becoming a big story in the news, there's a really, really good chance that it's serving the power structure. And the whole reason that it's a big story in the news is to that end. And so instead of being reactive to the story that you see on television or on YouTube or on social media, whatever it is, if you assume that the reason that it's a big story is because the power structure wants you to know or believe or react to something, then that might be a much better way to filter the information that you're getting than actually reacting to it. So you go meta, meaning that you analyze it for what it is, instead of what they want you to do. So that's the kind of first leading indicator of epistemological warfare. The second leading indicator is that the more media attention and production value that a fear-based story has, the more likely it is to be false. And when I say false, that doesn't mean fake or, well, maybe it means fake. It doesn't mean that real things don't happen. So, for example, in a school shooting, it doesn't mean that people aren't getting killed, right? Or in some kind of an event where there's a disaster and really, really bad things happen. It doesn't mean that the bad things aren't happening. It means that the reasons that how the thing happened winds up becoming quite different than the actual cause. And we see this all the time in terrorism, which is a big, again, part of the reason it's been taking me so long to publish this story is because I get into these things and then I go, well, I start making a list of all of the terrorist events, and then it makes me, then I go take a shower and remember 5 more. And then I go and I do a couple of internet searches and I find 5 more. And so pretty soon I'm dealing with an entire, section of something that looks more like a book than an article. And I have to kind of go pare it back. So terrorism, climate fear, climate change, the world's going to end tomorrow because human beings are farting too much. Nuclear war. People have heard me talk about this on the show before. My evidence for the fact that there's no nuclear weapons is the amount of fear that has been sold to us by Hollywood and the news media and the New York Times bestseller list and places like the Council on Foreign Relations and RAND. And they want us to be afraid of nuclear weapons. And I'm not saying that bad things didn't happen in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because I certainly think that they did. But I don't believe that what happened there was a nuclear weapon. I believe it was some kind of big bomb that went on. It might have been, there's all kinds of things that it could be. The diseases, I don't have to get too far into COVID-19. You guys all know about that. Extraterrestrials. How many movies has Steven Spielberg and James Cameron and other people who have the Order of the British Empire made that want to convince us that extraterrestrials are real and that we are, the genetic progeny of the Anunnaki, or whatever the story is that you want to pull out of the David Icke thinks that we're ruled by lizard people, and there's all kinds of different stories, and then AI. AI is going to kill us all. Elon Musk is all about warning us about the terror of AI, and James Cameron again is making movies about how his Terminator movies about how AI is going to wind up killing us. And again, let me see, somebody's talking about dark journalist. I'll talk about that later. Okay. Anyway, to me, if I see a whole bunch of, and again, I'm doing these retrospectives where I'm going back 40 or 50 years and I'm kind of making a catalog of alien stuff and a catalog of disease stuff. We watched a movie called The Cassandra Crossing. Anybody in the chat ever seen The Cassandra Crossing with Burt Lancaster and Richard Harris and Martin Sheen? Martin Sheen's amazing in that film. He plays a junkie mountain climber. In any case, and spoiler alert, it's movie's 50 years old, so I'm not going to feel bad about it. Everyone dies. Everyone dies. Anyway, these fear-based tropes have been going on for, since World War II. It actually, H.G. Wells probably started it the turn of the 20th century, 19th century, but from the 19th to the 20th century. It's been going on for a long time. And when you start to make lists, it starts to become self-apparent that these things are programs and that they've been going on for a long time. And so I don't believe, Peter Thiel is the reptile. It's a anagram. It's hilarious. Anyway, that all of these tropes, and I'm using that word specifically, wind up leading me to believe that they're all mind control operations, and that doesn't mean that real people don't get killed, but it means that the intention, which is what the topic of the show is today, the intention of all of these things is to mind control us using fear and psychological warfare. So the third leading indicator of epi-war is that the explanation about the death of a lightning rod persona, like, think Jeffrey Epstein or John F. Kennedy, that its truthfulness and causes depend on how convenient the death is. That is, if somebody needs to die in the middle of the street like John F. Kennedy did, then they'll die in the middle of the street like John F. Kennedy did. If somebody has to appear dead, and you're really just going to shuffle them off the stage, then somebody like Jeffrey Epstein or Jim Morrison, I was hearing somebody who was somebody who was quoting someone from the QAnon community, was talking about how Marilyn Monroe was not really killed. Whether or not you believe those things, the explanation of the way that these people go winds up becoming the metadata. And again, Parmenides' principle is what is. We don't know how Marilyn Monroe died. We do know the explanation that everybody gives, right? That she had a drug addict, that she had an overdose, that she was having an affair with both Bobby and John F. Kennedy. I don't know if any of those things are true. She might have been an asset that was sent by my guess. Like, if I had to guess, finger in the air, she was a MI6 asset who was sent to compromise the American government. And when she outlived her usefulness, then she was terminated. And she was probably one of the original MK Ultra Monarch presidential model mind control victims. She was that would have made her a victim. In any case, the deaths of people like, Andrew Breitbart, which is how I got into this whole thing. I met Andrew Breitbart, and then 5 months later, he was dead. Well, he seemed like a kind of a young and vital guy. He had a lot of energy, in the story that he died of a heart attack, and that he was adopted, and that he didn't really know the medical history of his real parents and all that other stuff. It's all very convenient, right? But the fact is that he was selling this idea, which is that politics is downstream from culture. And that is a meta idea. Ideas like that, instead of saying, oh, this is a good guy or that's a bad guy, what Breitbart was selling was critical thinking skills. And the people that control the world don't want people who sell critical thinking skills. They want people who will pick a side. They want people who will play a dialectic game. And so the fact that Andrew Breitbart was actively trying to get people to think critically, to me, made him a big target. That may not be the reason. There might have been all kinds of other things going on with him that I don't know about. But again, the explanation about the death of a lightning rod persona, its truthfulness and causes, depend on how convenient that death is. And then the fourth one, which is really the most obvious one to me, because I've been working on this book section on the Duke Report for, 5 years now. Let me see if I can pull it up. Let's see. Here we go. I've done some work on it this week. It's getting better, folks. The Duke Report book section is getting better. I have figured out how to change the order of the books on the homepage. And pretty soon I'm going to have the order of the books on every section of the website correct, but the content is the main thing, and the content is 99% there. But I was doing research this week, and I was going through the website and I was cleaning it up, and it reminded me of a book that I had found before the fire, before my house burned down, and I hadn't really had a chance to really go look at it, read the book, and do a summary and all the other things. And it's this book, Meta History: The Historical Imagination in 19th Century Europe. And what I found fascinating about this book is that it comes to many of the same conclusions that Richard Bandler and John Grinder and later Robert Dilts came to about neurolinguistic programming, only in this case, they're talking about history. And so I'm going to segue from my 4 leading indicators of epistemological warfare, and I'm going to transition here into talking about this book a little bit. But before I do that, I'm going to go back to the homepage and just let you know that the 4th law of epistemological warfare is that the Library of Alexandria is an ongoing fire. That's my 4th leading indicator. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that, what is that? I don't know. Can you guys hear the music on somebody? Somebody is, I think it's an Amazon delivery driver who thinks that playing his radio at the top volume before he drops a package off on my porch is a good idea. Anyway, I digress. The Library of Alexandria is always on fire. And what that means is that George Orwell's memory hole, that idea that inconvenient facts are constantly being eliminated and deleted from the public perception in order to control narratives, is absolutely 100% true. And again, this is using Parmenides' rubric of what is. These books, starting with Tragedy and Hope and The Anglo-American Establishment by Carol Quigley, and then all of the books written by Anthony Sutton and the like, Gary Allen and his partner Larry Abraham, Douglas Reed. All these writers wrote these really thoughtful and historically accurate books, and they never went anywhere, and they never became anything. And again, that goes back to the 1st law of epistemological warfare, which is public narratives are amplified by how well they serve power. So these books have ideas that don't serve power. And the fact that they disappear or become unbooked, as it were, they become burned like Fahrenheit 451 in the public consciousness, that winds up becoming metadata. Because Carol Quigley wrote Tragedy and Hope. Tragedy and Hope lays out the conspiracy that has been running the world for the last 100 years, 120 years. He does it in a very thoughtful and academic way. And yet it's never become a Netflix TV series. It's not become, a History Channel documentary, nothing. It gets disappeared, And so the Library of Alexandria is an ongoing fire, which leads me to this book, the Meta History. And again, I was attracted to this book by its title, Meta History: The Historical Imagination in the 19th Century. And it's by a guy named Hayden White. And thank you, Amazon Prime, for the audio interlude for this podcast. And if you guys don't, just to kind of go over the book section of the Duke Report, which is dukereportbooks.com, what I try to do is I try to provide a 1,500 word summary for every book on here. I've got over 600 books now with 1,500 word summaries. I tell you every place that you can go get it, because this book's a very expensive book, and there are ways that you can just go read it online. And I give you links to all of those things. But what I've been doing lately also is that I've been creating these AI podcasts using Notebook LM to create a podcast. And this is a 52-minute podcast on the book. And if you listen to the podcast, it'll give you a pretty good idea of what the book is. Tori Alexander did was it a note or a post? It was a note on her Substack a couple of days ago about how she finds these podcasts that I've been making. And she also references my wife's commentary about these podcasts. They are, in essence, they are Cliff Notes. They're not, sometimes they make errors. Sometimes they're not perfect, but they're pretty good. I think they're pretty good if you want to understand what a book is about. I've gone out of my way right at this point to make sure that you have every different way that you could go look at this book if you didn't want to read it. So I've given you the 1,500 word summary. I'm giving you a 57-minute podcast. And then if people have posted YouTube videos, here are interviews with Hayden White. And I think that the book is pretty good, but I think it's got some holes that you can drive a truck through. And I want to talk about those a little bit because I think that the epistemological warfare component of it is highlighted. One of the things that somebody was asking me about earlier today is that what book is a great book for understanding all of this stuff. And the reality is, and I learned this, I didn't, come up with this myself. This, James Corbett and Jay Dyer and Richard Grove and other researchers on the internet, Matt Arrett and Cynthia Chung, would tell you that you need to read as many books as you possibly can. You need to read as many sources as you possibly can, because to a certain extent, they're all limited hangouts. That is, even if somebody didn't leave something out on purpose, for example, Carroll Quigley was not privy to the work that Anthony Sutton had done when he wrote Tragedy and Hope and when he wrote the Anglo-American Establishment. And if he had been privy to that work, he might have had completely different things to say about certain ideas or people or organizations. Likewise, Anthony Sutton didn't know a lot of stuff about people who came after him. Aon Ratu, who wrote the Milner-Fabian conspiracy. So there's a lot of standing on the shoulders of giants. And, whoever the last person to publish a book was, when Guido Preparata wrote Conjuring Hitler, and then he rewrote the book for a more popular audience called The Incubation of Nazism, both of which are featured here on the Duke Report. There was stuff that he didn't know, right? And so now we've got this latest book, which I think, again, is one of the best history books that I've ever written. I was checking my Amazon Associates reporting the other day, and I've been personally responsible for 8 people buying this book, which I think probably totals to about 70 or 80 cents in revenue for me. But I'm not doing it for the revenue. I'm glad that 8 people bought this book, 2 World Wars and Hitler. And, Jim McGregor and John O'Dowd thank Guido Preparata. They thank Anthony Sutton. They thank Carroll Quigley for all of the work that they did in their books, because they wouldn't have been able to write this book if it weren't for them. So in a way that we're all kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're learning things today that frankly, people didn't know 5 years ago, because they didn't have the internet. They didn't have the ability to touch the scope or the breadth of sources that are available. And the AI thing, again, using AI to analyze these books just certainly makes it a lot faster to be able to get through this stuff. And like I said, I do not use AI as an encyclopedia in general. I will point it at a specific subject and I will ask questions about that. So let me see. Chris 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 Cristoforo. Cristoforo says the AI podcasts are pretty nifty. I've listened to a few on SoundCloud. Yeah, I have almost 200 of them at this point on SoundCloud. And like I said, I'm making one. Basically, I'm making them as I'm working on the book section of the Duke Report. And so, if you, I don't have a PDF or a digital copy of Two World Wars and Hitler. So, in order to create the podcast, I took a summary that was done by what's his name over at Winter Oak, Paul Kudnick. Paul Kudnick did a really great summary, and somebody else did a really good summary of the book. And I took those two summaries, I used them as sources, and I used those two sources in order to make this podcast. So, and this podcast is 36 minutes long. So again, this is a great book. It ties all of these things together. It ties Quigley and Sutton and Preparata. It puts them all together in one cohesive through line that you can kind of understand how World War I was started, how World War II was started, and puts it all in one book. So I highly recommend this book. But if you don't have time, go listen to the podcast, and if you don't have that time to do that, then listen to the interview with Jim McGregor and John O'Dowd. Jumping back to my my notes and talking about visit site. I want to talk about metahistory. So what attracted me to this book was the title Metahistory. And as I started to dig into the book, the author, what's his name again? I'll go look. Hayden White. Hayden White has this thesis that I 100% agree with. And his thesis is that there is a pattern, a linguistic pattern that you can see when you're reading history. But before I get into that, I'm going to do what hypnotists call a subroutine, and I'm going to talk about intent a little bit, because to me, intent is, which hypnotists refer to as presupposition, which is where or mind reading, and the idea is that you're trying to guess or understand where somebody else is coming from, and depending upon the way that you frame those questions, you can come off as inquisitive, or you can come off as a troll. And as an example of a troll, there's somebody who's got an account called Phoenician Hunter. And generally, I think I have a generally friendly relationship with this person. I don't know who they are. They have a tendency to err on the side of like agent bunch of numbers, or Michael Jones, or Stu Peters, or Nick Fuentes, or Candace Owens, the Israel/Jews are responsible for all the bad stuff that happens in the world trope. And I don't go there because I think that there's a wall of those people, and behind them there's another, like the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. There's another curtain. You have to pull the last curtain back. In any case, they accused me of something in a very kind of like forward way of not retweeting or restacking, in the case of Substack, somebody who's got an account called Escape Key. Now, Escape Key, I don't have paid subscriptions on a lot of accounts on Substack, but I have a paid subscription on Escape Key. And I think Escape Key does great work. And in fact, I have conversations, text messages, not a lot, okay, but I've had several back and forths with Escape Key, and I think Escape Key does great work. And this person in a note, one of the things about the Duke Report on Substack is that if I put up a post, you have to be a paid subscriber in order to leave a comment. And I feel like that elevates the level of the comments. I feel like the people who leave comments on my Substack posts are thoughtful, and when they have criticisms of me, their criticisms are real, and I take those things to heart, and I try to understand where the person is coming from, because I don't pretend that like I've got the answers to all of it, because I don't. Okay. But I like limiting my comments on my posts to subscribers. I don't have that choice on notes. And so a lot of times when people don't want to pay to be a subscriber and they want to be contradictory or uh, I would say, trollish, that's where it winds up in the notes. And I kind of just thought this person was trolling me. I thought they're accusing me, they're making some kind of inference that because I don't restack escape keys posts enough. Well, first of all, escape keys posts are sometimes 20,000 words long, with all kinds of screenshots. And so one of the things that is different about Substack than other social media is that generally, if Courtney Turner publishes a 6,000 word story or a 10,000 word story, I'm probably going to go read it first before I repost it, before I restack it. Now, I understand that that messes up the viral nature of things, but in general, I like to kind of know what I'm pushing out there in the world, what I'm publicizing. So it may take me a few days to get to a point where I am publishing something or I'm restacking something that somebody did. And in that case, yeah, it might take me a week or 2 weeks or a month before I restack something that I think is important and people should read, because I need to fit it into my schedule to go make the hour, the 2 hours available that I have in order to be able to go consume that post and actually go do something about it. And somebody says, I hate people who leave negative comments and create a YouTube channel that has no ID or other info. Yeah, I'm Peter Duke, damn it. Phoenician hunter. You're so clever. Okay. I'm Peter Duke. I'm putting it all out there right now. Okay. And I'm not reposting escape key because I have some kind of nefarious agenda. That's a presupposition, and that's mind reading. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because presupposition and mind reading winds up becoming a trope, as Hayden White puts it. So what I want to do is I want to jump back to Parmenides. And Parmenides is the Greek philosopher who's most famous for 2 words, and they're the only 2 words that you need to know about Parmenides, which is what is. Okay. So to the point of the person who's in the chat, Phoenician hunter has chosen to be anonymous. Peter Duke has chosen not to be anonymous. These are things that you who are watching this channel can know for sure. Okay. You know that it's true that my name is Peter Duke. You know that this person who's Phoenician hunter, you don't know who they are. And their icon is a camel. Okay. You can know those things. All right. But it doesn't tell you a lot about who they are. So presuppositions and mind reading are when you assume that you know or understand or have secret knowledge of what is behind what somebody else is saying. And this winds up becoming a trope that you see constantly in social media. You see it with talking head pundits. Everybody knows what Donald Trump is thinking. Everybody knows what Donald Trump is really saying when he's not saying something. These are all presuppositions. These are mind reading, right? So Hayden White wrote this book, Meta History, and I'm reading this book, Meta History, at the same time that my wife and I are consuming. There's a TV right here, our new Samsung TV, and at night we watch movies or we watch TV series. And currently we're watching Foundation, And Foundation is the Apple Plus woke revisioning of Isaac Asimov's famous trilogy, which became more called Foundation. And then we're also watching a movie called The Creator, which came out a couple of years ago, and it's got Denzel Washington's son who can't act his way out of a paper bag. And the entire movie is essentially about AI ethics, which is what the latest post by Escape Key's got a whole series that he's got coming out right now on AI ethics. And so jumping back to my first law of epistemological warfare, that public narratives are amplified by how well they serve power, the fact that Apple is making this giant expenditure into Isaac Asimov's Foundation, and then they're reframing it. You can use Parmenides' principle to look at what the original books that were written by Isaac Asimov said. Okay, because you can go read those, you can go buy them, right? Or you can, go to the Duke Report book section. You can find another way that you can consume them. And then you could take a look at the Apple version of Foundation, and you can see what the differences are, what code writers would call the deltas, what the difference is, delta is D. So the difference between what Isaac Asimov wrote and what Apple produced. Okay. And part of what's taking me a long time in writing this article is I'm kind of going through those things. In the Apple version, the empire, in both versions, the meta message from Asimov and Apple is that the highest form of civilization is empire. And that when civilization is not in a stage of empire, that it's a dark age. Well, if you go back to my fourth law of epistemological warfare, that dark age might just be because that part of history was erased by whoever the people were that were in power. It's only dark because we don't see it. It doesn't mean that nothing happened. It doesn't mean that nothing got written down. And it doesn't mean that people weren't inventing things or making discoveries or doing stuff. It just means that we don't know. We have nothing written down from that period of time because reasons, right? So, so Asimov and Apple Computer, Apple Plus, both agree that, at least in their telling of this narrative, that empire is the highest form of civilization. Well, I would argue that that's not necessarily true. Okay, but in any case, there's other things that go on. The empire is a genetic dynasty in that all of the emperors are clones, and the clones are all being controlled by a robot, and the robot is AI, obviously. And so AI is controlling the universe in the Apple version of it. Well, since we're in this environment where, again, the public narratives are amplified by how well they serve power, not truth, Apple clearly wants us all to believe that AI is the highest form of intelligence and that empire is the highest form of civilization. And so it makes sense that having an AI controlled civilization, which AKA is technocracy, which is what Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab and all these guys are all about, then it makes sense that this is the narrative that they're trying to sell us, right? And I started thinking about the framing of Asimov as psychohistory and then benchmarking that against Hayden White's frame of metahistory. And I was thinking about Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, and the idea that most of the things, or many of the things that I attribute psychology to, are what Hayden White would call tropes. But Hayden White was just looking at history. So let's go back to Hayden White here for a second, and talk about this book, Meta History. Now, what's interesting about this book, Meta History, is it came out 2 years before Bandler and Grinder started publishing their books on neurolinguistic programming. And what I find interesting about it is that what Hayden White is doing is that he's looking at historians. I mean, and I'm using the term historians loosely, he's looking at Karl Marx, he's looking at Immanuel Kant, he's looking at, people that are mostly known as philosophers or political theorists and framing them as history, but they all use history in order to build their own cases. And so in that way, it makes sense that he's referring to them as historians. But the way that he breaks down the way that they tell stories is linguistically. So he looks at what Karl Marx wrote and he's looking at the linguistic framework of it. Not unlike the way that I look at things through this meta model formulation that I've talked about on the show before. And I try to look at it through this linguistic framework because sometimes just the way the stories or the words are put together tells you, it gives you as much information as whatever it is that they're trying to sell you in the ideas that they're trying to tell you. And so White has this breakdown of what he calls tropes. And the tropes are linguistic patterns. And instead of using the new Zhuji labels that Bandler and Grinder came up with, so cause, effect, complex equivalence, these things that I talk about all the time, Hayden White goes back to the Greek, and I have no problem with going back to the Greek. I think going back to the Greek is fine because at some point you have to realize that the reason that we are always using Greek words is because Greek is a much bigger vocabulary than English, and they have words that mean things that we just don't have words for in English. So he talks about 4 different tropes, and I'm going to go over them here. But what's interesting about these tropes is that they all have some kind of rough equivalence, I would say, in neurolinguistic programming. So the 4 tropes are metaphor, which is a word that we all know, which reframes reality by substitution, by often distorting the map to the territory relationship. And the next one is a word that I never heard of before I started reading this book. And it's metonymy. And metonymy. 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 Okay. Metonymy deletes context by letting one aspect stand for a whole. Okay, so we've got distortion, we've got deletion, and then the third one is synecdoche. 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 Synecdoche, which generalizes a part into a totality. So a part into a totality would be like a fleet is a group of ships. That's a synecdoche. And then irony, which introduces contradictions that destabilize direct meaning, which can obscure responsibility or agency. So I'm not going to go in depth in this book because it's an academic exercise, and I think that I would probably lose a lot of people if I got too much into the detail of this book. And like I said, you can go to DukeReportBooks.com, you can click on this book, and you can go and you can find out more about the book, and you can actually read the book if you wanted to. I ordered it. It's not a cheap book. It's like a $32 paperback book because I think it's probably still a functioning textbook at universities. But here's the big takeaway. And the big takeaway is that 2 years before Bandler and Grinder were using linguistics in order to describe the mechanics of persuasion, White was using linguistics to explain the mechanics of how history persuades people to believe. All of these things, all of this information is about structured belief. That is, these are the methods, these are the linguistic methods for changing how people believe what they believe. Okay. And the big disappointment that I have with Hayden White, and I understand it. I understand why. I think I understand why he did it. And again, I'm presupposing here. Okay, is that um, I'm going to use a metaphor. To use a metaphor to describe the weakness in White's work, I might call it his Achilles heel. White describes he goes through this whole process where he describes these tropes and all of the different tropes and how they apply to all of the different historians. And basically what he's saying is that history isn't true or factual. And the excuse that he gives is that historians are dependent on using the forms that people who write literature use. So a historian, in order to write a book that people will read, he needs to write it the same way that a novelist writes a novel. Well, let me just read what I've got written here. White describes historians as unconsciously reliant on literary strategies. His critique targets the claim to a claim to not scientific neutrality. He argues that historians often present their narratives as if they were objective mirrors of the past, but in fact, those narratives are guided by tropes and linguistic conventions. The issue for White is historians imagine themselves to be simply reporting facts, like Matt Taibbi, when in reality, they're shaping them through their literary choices. This is one reason that many traditional historians bristled at meta history. White did not accuse them of conspiracy, yet by insisting that history is a narrative construction, he undermined the authority as guardians of objective truth. I think this is a limited hangout. I think this is a kind of a hair pulling contest. His point is structural. It's not moral, like Bandler and Grindler and Robert Dilts and Robert Cialdini and all of the other people who are in the persuasion business. What's his name? Anyway, I digress. The problem lies in the medium of historical discourse itself, not in the intentions of the historian. And this is where I think there's an elephant in the room. Okay. And the elephant in the room is that, going back to my first rule of epistemological warfare, okay, that public narratives are amplified by how well they serve power, not truth. The one thing that he leaves out is that maybe historians have an agenda, and I would point to, and I think that people like Lyndon LaRouche and Matt Arrett and people of that ilk, Anton Chaikin and Webster Tarpley would probably agree with me, is that history is a weapon, and that people like Arnold Toynbee, who was one of the original roundtable members, and I think a member of the Fabian Society, that these people have weaponized history. The book, The Poisoned Loving Cup, documents how this has happened. Charlotte Iserbyt, who wrote The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, has documented all of this stuff. That you look at people like Winston Churchill and his history of World War II, or Niall Ferguson and all of his hagiographies that he writes on the Rothschilds and their ilk they're glosses, right? They're not history. They're elaborate stories that are meant to be consumed as history. And so for that reason, I believe that there's a giant hole in Hayden White's thesis. And that is that White frames historians as authors shaped by discourse and not as deliberate deceivers. He presents historians as practitioners of narrative structure whose shaping of the past arises from the form, not the intent. I think that's bullshit. His focus remains on structural influence, not personal motivation. Now, I understand, I think, why he did it. White's critique targets the framing and meaning making embedded in writing without assigning ill intent to those doing the writing. White's scholarship, as noted in his biography, explicitly denies relativist or purely conspiratorial intentions of his work. Rather than flattening meaning or denying reality, he insists that the structure of representation inevitably shapes historical narrative, even when historians believe they remain objective. I just think that's nonsense. I think it's nonsense, because I think that what White leaves out is that there's a lot of history that is written by the winners, that is specifically designed to control populations, and that if you leave that out, that you're not being 100% honest with what's going on. So we got 5-star comments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off the screen here, and then I am going to take a look at the comments and see what we've got going. DE Sassone says, if you leave out ontology, you're missing half the equation. I don't know if you're talking to me or the audience, but I think ontology is basically the way that things are organized. So my best example of ontology being missing would be, and I had a conversation with can't remember. I was on Substack or on Notes. Jonathan Haidt. He wrote this book on moral psychology, and he has 5 dimensions of moral psychology. And one of his dimensions is sanctity and degradation, which is the dimension that Jonathan Haidt uses in order to define somebody's religiosity, how religious they are, right? And the problem that I have with Haidt's 5 dimensions, although I think they're useful, but I think they're in the wrong order. I think their ontology is wrong. And what I mean by that is that if somebody believes in God, and they believe that if they don't behave a certain way, that their immortal soul is in jeopardy, then that's going to have a cascading effect. That's hierarchical. And that's what we mean by ontology. It's hierarchical. Their belief system controls their morals, right? And so to have sanctity and degradation on the same level as all of the other 4 moral dimensions that Haidt has, I think is ontologically flawed. I think it's there's a problem there. And so, yeah, I think ontology is really important. And again, ontology and metaphor and metonymy and synecdoche. These are all words that, again, I'm still just trying to get my arms around it. And if you were an 8th grader in Greece, you'd probably already know all of these things and what they mean. So I don't know if I answered your question or if that's what you were talking about, but if it is, you can let Jessica know and she'll put it back up. Actually, you've got 4 of these comments are from the same person. Okay. See, blah, blah, blah. I haven't seen the interview with Chris Carter. And I don't know what this is. You could send me a link if you want me to, just for heads up, if you want me to watch something, send a link to contact at the Duke Report. We don't check it every day. Okay. But, send me a link and tell me why I should watch it. Okay. People who send me 3-hour videos without any context, I will not watch the video. If you tell me why I should watch this interview with Chris Carter, then I'll go watch it. But I'm not going to remember this person's name after I click this comment off the screen. So send me a link. Somebody said Dark Journalist was on Metzger today. I don't know who Metzger is. See, I don't. Kurt Metzger. Kurt Metzger. Yeah, Kurt could have me on. I handed Kurt a copy of my book, and then he hasn't had me on. Okay. But I think Kurt and I would get along. I like Kurt. He's hilarious. All right. DE says, Sony, some genuine books looking at meta history have leaked through Oswald Spengler's Decline of the West. I have problems with Oswald Spengler. Okay. I don't like the axiomatic finality of his treatise. To me, it covers empire. I don't think that the empire that controls the world ever disappeared. I think that the carapace of Rome was shed, and that the oligarchy and the cryptocracy that ran Rome eventually wound up in Venice, and they shed that carapace, and they wound up in Amsterdam, and they shed that carapace, and they wound up in the city of London, and they shed that carapace, and they wound up in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street. But I don't think that they ever went away. And so I don't buy the whole rise and fall of empires. Again, that puts me at odds with Carol Quigley too. Okay. I don't buy it. Okay. I right now, I think that what you're seeing the destruction of the American government through the Hegelian dialectic, that the third way has already been determined, and that is technocracy. And so when you burn down the Pacific Palisades and then you blame Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, when it's really some people, billionaires, that are making decisions at Lake Geneva about whether or not the Palisades or Lahaina or pick your prime real estate with oil underneath it or some other natural resources, that when you blame the politicians or the government infrastructure for something that oligarchy and cryptocracy are creating, then you've missed the plot. So, Spengler said a lot of interesting and clever things, and I don't, I'm not buying what he's selling. So I'll just put it that way. And that doesn't mean I don't think he's a smart guy who had a lot of insight, because I think he's a smart guy who had a lot of insight. I think I have more information now because of the internet and because of the number of things that I can, dots that I can connect now just by virtue of this technology that we've got that Oswald Spengler didn't have the ability to do. Arthur always has great comments, said anthropological writing and ethnography are good at both reportage and deeper structure. Yeah, again, to me, it's the deep structure. So just to go over this one more time, Noam Chomsky didn't invent this. Noam Chomsky documented it in the 1950s, that we all have this pool, the Darwinists or the Malthusians would say that it's genetic, and it's in some kind of a cell neuron network or something in our brain. I like to think of our mind as our connection to the creator. And so I have a much more transcendent idea about what that is, but we have this deep structure and we're constantly accessing it. And I think Bandler and Grinder are correct in their assessment of Chomsky, that we are constantly deleting, distorting, and generalizing. And, Hayden White would say that we're using metaphor, metonymy, and synecdoche, which I think are just 3 Greek words for saying the same ideas. And euphemism winds up becoming a pattern that you see all the time. Some people may call something the Holy Spirit, right? Somebody who's into Carl Jung may call that synchronicity. Somebody else may call it something else. But what we're talking about is different labels for the same. My favorite atheists love to talk about emergence, because they don't want to say God, right? They say emergence, right? But they're what these things. These are all labels that are describing the same phenomenon, right? And so if you start to be able to recognize the linguistic patterns and you can see them, then I can take a look at a book like Meta History by Hayden White, and then I can take a look at Frogs into Princes and The Structure of Magic and the books that Robert Dilts has written. And I see similarities between what Hayden is talking about. Hayden is talking about the linguistic structure of history. Bandler, Grinder, and Dilts are talking about the linguistic structure of belief reframing. And I think that if you go, it doesn't matter what the discipline is. If you learn how to recognize these patterns, then it allows you the advantage to be able to ask questions, because basically the way that NLP works, and I'm going to bring this back to intent, which is where I started and where I wanted to end, and that is that the difference between a hypnotist and somebody who's having an honest conversation with a friend is that a hypnotist will usually have intent. And what that means is that if you hire a hypnotist because you want to quit smoking, or you want to lose weight, or you want to quit drinking, or you want to quit smoking weed, then the hypnotist has an intent, right? They have a goal that they're working towards. And so the questions that they ask you in their frame, in their mechanism of reframing your deep structure, are all going to be based on that intention, right? A friend who's just trying to get to know what you think about something may use all of the same techniques. They may notice that you've deleted something, that you've distorted something, that you've generalized something, but their intent may just be to find out more about who you are, because they're genuinely interested in you as a person. And so intent winds up becoming a really important thing to pay attention to. And so the reason that I brought up this guy, Phoenician Hunter, earlier, is just because there's I have one weak spot right now, and I'm working on it. Okay. Hopefully a year from now, I won't have this weak spot anymore. But when people question my intent or why I'm actually doing something, and they assign some kind of negative intent to me, it pisses me off. And I have to work on controlling it, because it's a weakness in my character to be able to allow people to push my button that way. But in any case, the methodology is the same, whether or not you're trying to push my button or get information. The difference is intent. What are you intending to do? If you're trying to make me look a fool, if you're trying to expose me as a something or other, I'm probably not gonna. It's not gonna sit well with me, right? So if Escape Key wants to apologize to me, I'm sorry, I misspoke. If Phoenician Hunter wants to apologize to me and explain to me what he was presupposing in his comment, I'm open to it. You can send an email to contact@the Report. But otherwise, I'm going to just keep him blocked. I'm not really interested in getting explained to, like Ricky Ricardo. In any case, that is, I don't know, I'll go read Arthur's comment one more time. Anthropological writing and ethnography are good at both reportage and deeper structure. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of them, right? Is to try to assign that stuff by looking at what is, and then correlating that somehow. In any case, I'll take that away, and then I'll see if D. Sassoni says absolutely intent is everything. Yes, void as many triggers as you can. What spiritual seekers have taught since time immemorial. Yep, that's what Zen is all about. And I don't know if anybody else has got any more questions, but I'll hang out here for a second. And what?
What we saw today, the seals.
Sorry?
Show the seals.
Oh, I'm glad I have a producer. she was telling, I have these headphones that are so good that I can't hear her, and she's sitting right there, and she's saying something to me. So we went out to the beach today. So normally, we've lived here for about a month, and normally the seals are really, sea lions, I'll be specific, are really loud. And we didn't hear any of them this morning. And the reason that they're really loud is usually because they're across the channel and they're sitting by the breakwater, and the breakwater is all these rocks and concrete, and it just turns into a giant megaphone. So there may be only 5 sea lions there, but it just sounds like they're in our apartment and they're barking all day long. We didn't hear any sea lions today, and we had a friend come over and we walked to the beach, and this is what we saw at the beach. This is a 1-minute walk out my door. This is not the Pacific Palisades. I know what. Can you guys hear the audio? Anyway, so these were my neighbors today. There had to have been hundreds of sea lions. 30-second walk outside my apartment. Anyway, that's that. Yeah, Paradiso, exactly. What do they say? I hope you don't mind their sounds. Yeah, at a certain point you get to. Ron probably has the same issue with. Oh wait, where did he go? Ron probably has the same issue with polar bears. Ron's up in Alaska. Anyway, we live on the Silver Strand. I'm enjoying the weather here, but I understand that in the wintertime that beach has a world-class pipeline like curl. So I'm pretty excited about seeing that. If that's all, and nobody's got any more questions, then I'm going to ask Jessica to go grab Quigley, and I will give everybody one more shot at Quigley. So Quigley has not felt well until today. We took him to the vet several times, and the vet put him on some really good meds, and so he is a number one boom right now. And here he comes. What?
He's chilling out.
Are you chilling? Were you sleeping?
He was.
Were you sleeping? All right, there's Mr. Quigley. Mr. Quigley will say
bye.
All right, bye-bye. It's kind of warm. So Quigley is taking a nap. Ron says, I can't live by the water. The sound of waves wears me out. No polar bear trouble around here. Anyway, all right. Yeah, good health. Yeah, Quigley, he can always use your prayers, but he's doing much better now than he was doing a couple of days ago. And he's a good boy. Boy, is he smart. He's he's 10 weeks old. He's totally potty trained. Like, he was having bad gastrointestinal things going on, but that didn't ever keep him from going out when he needed to do his business. So we feel incredibly lucky and blessed. And I'm glad that all you guys were here today. And if you've got any more, like I said, if you've got any questions, send them to contact@thedukereport. If you want to support what I'm doing here, you can go to thedukereport.substack.com and you can become a paying member. Or you can go to buymeacoffee.com and you can buymeacoffee.com/thedukereport, and you can buy me a coffee or buy me 100 coffees, whatever you want. You can go to thedukereport.com and it will take you to my Substack, and you could click on the shop button and you can buy yourself an edgy t-shirt. Been selling a lot of We Need More Rope shirts lately. I've got We Need More Rope shirts, which are kind of my my version of the Gadsden flag. Let me see if I can pull that up. I think it's my pinned tweet. I think probably the easiest way to do that is go to my pinned tweet and share this tab instead, and you'll see that you can buy a We Need More Rope t-shirt. And I think I have them in 14 different languages. I think I have them in English and German and French and Italian and Russian and Ukrainian and Chinese and Japanese and Latvian and a bunch of other languages. So Korean. So yeah, get yourself a We Need More Rope t-shirt. And other than that, I will be posting. I will get that story finished this week, and I'll be posting on Substack. And other than that, I will see you again next week. And thanks for joining. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.